Yoninim yomni, yoninim yomni, yoninim kulemni, homing golong golong du nomaniki, igolo ya pe yasu pai dom, yasu do dom tini ang wei wonam ta.
Welcome to Lesson 19 of the Mountain Maidu language class. Today we'll start with the Modern Maidu Workbook, and then we'll go on to our first full Maym Gallagher recording. In the workbook, some words in Maidu can cover a lot of meanings. For example, the word chi can mean cloth, clothes, rag, or blanket. When you're already talking about something like, say, clothes, you could just use the word chi. But sometimes you need to be more specific for people to understand what you mean. That's when you can add another word to narrow down what you're talking about. Here are some examples of chi with a describing word that makes it more specific. These are already in the regular Maidu dictionary. Simdakum chi is a napkin. Mouth wiping cloth. Simi is mouth. Simdak, wipe the mouth. Simdakum chi, a napkin. Banchikum chi is curtains. Banchik means covering over. Banchikum chi, covering over cloth, curtains. Chinkuti is a blanket animal, jackrabbit. Chim kuti. Notice the first word, the describing word, ends in m to tie the two words together, as we learned early on in this course. If the describing word ends at a consonant, you add im, instead of just m. If the describing word ends in two vowels, like a and I, or if it ends in d, on or at, add im or yim to the end. For example, hoi pai becomes hoi paim when you use it as a describing word. Starting on page 26 in the Modern Maidu Workbook, there are some Maidu words that we can combine, creating new words out of words we already have in the dictionary. The first column shows a new word needed. These are all words we don't have from the old stories or the Shipley recordings. The next two columns have words we do have from the stories and recordings. These are all in the regular dictionary. In the last column, New Maidu Word, you're going to create the word we need out of the two existing words we already have. The first one is done for you. Don't forget to tie the words together with an M or IM at the end of the first word when you fill in the New Maidu Word column. From now on, in Intermediate Maidu, we're going to be inventing new words using all different methods. We won't have time to go through every one of these in the video, so we'll just pick a few. But please work through these on your own so you can understand how it's done. You may just work on the words that you think you'll use. To start, let's go over the first one, which is done for you. We don't have a Maidu word for apartment building. But if we take a word we do have, huboboto, a cluster of houses, and add another word we do have, uyi, building, we could create the word for apartment building just by tying these two together with an M. Hubobotom uyi. Now let's go on to the next one. We don't have a Maidu word for aquarium or fishbowl. But if we take two words we do have, mako, fish, and hubo, house, we can make up that word. What will it be? Makom hubo, fish house. You see how it works? Now, let's skip down to boots. Say you want to talk about boots, but we don't have the Maidu word. We do have a word for tall, hada, and we have a word for shoes, solo. How would you combine these to make a new word for boots? Hadam solo. Now, please go through these on your own or in your class. It's fun to make up new words. In each lesson, when you create new words based on the words or parts of words I give you, you might also think of the other possibilities, other words you could use instead of the ones I give you. For example, when you just made up the word for boots, you could have used the word for leg, toli, tolim solo, leg shoes, or tol kupem solo, leg having shoes. These are all good. The idea is to learn each word inventing method in the lessons and make sure your new word is understandable. Another Maidu student should be able to figure out what your new word means. On page 29, section 1b, you can make up new words using more than 2 existing words. Column 2 in this table is called modifier, which just means describing word. You can also use more than one word for each column, modifier, or noun. Here are some examples already in the dictionary. Notice that these 2-word modifiers or nouns are tied together with an M already. Now add an M on the end of the new modifier to create the new Maidu word out of these 3 words. Let's go over the first one, which is already done for you. We want a word for ancestral language. We already have a way to say ancestral land, hoyang koro, and a way to say language, weye. Now you can combine them together to mean ancestral land language. The new Maidu word is hoyang kodom weye. Now let's try the next one, century. Looking at the modifier column, we already know how to say 100 in Maidu. Maishchoko, 10 times 10. The word kodo not only means land or country, it means year. So how would you say century if you combined 100 and year? Maishchoko, kodo. I hope you'll have some fun working through the rest of these in the table on page 29. In each lesson, there will be short dialogues to get used to using the new made-up words. Try these out with another student. If you can memorize them, that's even better. The dialogues show how to use the words in sentences. Our new words are no good to us if we don't know how to use them. The dialogues in this lesson teach you how to ask for clarification if the other person is not being clear, and show how to make your meanings more specific and exact when someone doesn't understand you. We have sets of words in English like apples and oranges or bacon and eggs. In Maidu, these are expressed without the and in between that we have in English. These are different from the modified words we just talked about and are not connected with an M. If the set is the subject of the sentence, both words will end in M. If the set is the object of the sentence, both words will not have M. Any ending going on one of the words, like di or na, goes on both of them. When filling in the new word set, write them without any ending as object of a sentence in the new Maidu word column. Let's look at the first one, which is done for you. Salt and pepper. Ba tetep. That's it. Ba tetep nik soyap. Pass me the salt and pepper. If salt and pepper is the subject of the sentence, like salt and pepper are tasty, you would put an M on the end of both words. Bam tetepim, kakan dotibem. Tetep ends in a consonant, so you have to add IM instead of just M. Tetepim. Now let's skip down to mom and dad. How would you say it? Nikne, nikbeke. Nikne, nikbeke. My mother and my father. What if they're the subject of the sentence, like mom and dad are old? Niknem, nikbeken, kakan, nenopem. How would you say at mom and dad's? Nick bekuk habodi. Or you could say Nick di bekuk di. Now that you've invented some new words in sections 1A, 1B, and 1C, you can check them in the Modern Maidu Dictionary in the back of the workbook. Look for the correct lesson number and letter, for example, 1A, in the lesson column. There are so many ways to invent the same word, as you will see. Now we'll just mention exchanging nouns and adjectives. Go to page 31, section 1D. Nouns and adjectives are usually so much alike. If you only find a noun in the dictionary, like a person who does or is, you can make it into an adjective just by adding an M. If you just find an adjective in the dictionary and need the noun, you can basically use the adjective, just adding or removing the M, depending on if it's a subject of the sentence or an object. I think you already know this, but it wouldn't hurt to review and fill in the blanks on page 31. So, to summarize what we've learned so far in the Modern Maidu Workbook, in Chapter 1, we've learned how to make the most out of the words we already have in the regular Maidu dictionary. We learned how to recognize synonyms of existing words and realize maybe we do have that word in Maidu. We've learned to use a dictionary, thesaurus, and word substitution in sentences to find another word that has the same meaning. We learned about idioms and not to translate them word for word, but to try to find a synonym that means the same as that nonsensical idiom. We learned how to combine words we already have to make even more words, and we learned how to use adjectives from nouns and vice versa. In the next chapters of Modern Maidu, we'll learn how to invent new words using genuine Maidu parts. Now we're going to listen to a recording of Maym Gallagher talking about her grandfather. First, I'll play the recording and leave a little silence after each sentence for you to absorb it. I will also show the words on the screen. See how much you can understand.
Tibim klempubem hoyam kore di Niko Thomas Nikopa Henoyosas. Yaman mache monovani Henodom Ora Tawalmani Chenudom Ausas. Mam Klumani Ianam Huobe Yapedi Tuusayasi. Amam Teritum Tuikino Bosrom Amanikan Nikopayatam Wepam Mapem Tuidom. Om say hat pinkano wamapem. Aweten Magi Inyanam Yalaluni Inyanam Solusan. Tet minchum hat pinkano mankano adom se. Ka pai dom kaikas. Dom pi Sasan se tuedom se weyusan. Amoni pinkenuyutan be mim tubosno wo usaese. Mam benek de otodom Chedaboshusen be kanges muim bomom sewi noeten be kawi tawaldoidom oro chikutdom twalusaise. Nikopan waisim kausan tet jaham waisim terituna jahapim ni se makpapaiti dom humbet meni. Amam tawalboshusen makan disek Skam kapumim hubona iwe usais. Bebum miakadom. Klok betetum kaptidom. Tibi musek pe. Akumen kausen tibi wasasa pekuke pem. Woleki apem lawani mahatdom. Kochi bemat kudom. Dalalem hini homdom ausan. Aitin inyanam wolem kikan inyanam bomom tia mapem. Ja kutidom wolenan musek makitpe. Amama sim homdom se motiusan. Aitin bebum tui ses miakadom. Aitin kankis uk oi mapem sekubona. Tawal hepin goidom. Kani aikate hukinukas. Titere buwona ke hukichik dom be. Tem dekum masih minyana lutimbo mochenuonom. Wemtikas.
Well, did you understand that? Now we'll go through and translate it into English and talk about the grammar we've learned that helps us understand what she's saying. And there will be some new grammar to learn too. When Shipley recorded these stories, Maym Gallagher was there to tell him what they meant in English. But Maym Gallagher would often paraphrase, not translate word for word. And it seems sometimes Shipley reworded things. My translation is usually slightly different from his and sometimes very different. From time to time, when I'm not sure which is correct, I'll tell you how he translated it so you could decide for yourself. When I post the story and translation on our Facebook page, I'll show both my translations and Shipley's.
Tibim klempubem hoyam kore di Niko Thomas Nikopa henoyeusas.
As a little girl, a long time ago, my grandmother and I used to go along with my grandfather. Notice that the two subjects, Tibim Kalempubem, which is Maym Gallagher, and Nikotom, my grandmother, use the verb ending for we two, usas. You can tell the little girl and the grandmother are both subjects because they both end in M. But Nikopa, my grandfather, does not end in M. That's because he's not the one doing the action. We too used to go along with my grandfather. We used to accompany him. Aheno, go along with someone. Go with them.
Yaman machemonovani henodom. Oro tawalmani chenudom ausas.
When those two traveled the mountains, I used to go along with them, and when they worked gold, I used to watch. The main verb is chenudom ausas. I used to be watching. The subject is I. So the two dom words in the sentence, ahenodom and chenudom, have that same subject, I. The two Monique words have a different subject, Anomaly, they traveled, and Odotawalmani, they worked gold. These are bear cub clauses that are different from their mother. When those two traveled the mountains, I used to go along with them, and when they worked gold, I used to watch.
Am klumani iyanam huobe yapedi tu usayasi.
Then, when it was dark, we all used to sleep in the little Indian house that was built.
Amam tiedettum tuikinubos rom amanikan inikopayatam wepam mapem tuidom. Omni say hat pinkano mapem.
When those children were all in bed, then my late grandfather could tell Coyote bedtime stories and tell us to listen carefully. Now, it looks like Shipley cut something out of the recording right before this sentence. Maym Gallagher was probably telling him about different times she went with her grandparents, and he cut it down to make it into one story. Here's how we can tell he did that. In the first couple of sentences, Maym Gallagher talks about going with her grandmother and grandfather, and it's clear there are only 3 people. She was so little she just watched them pan for gold. Now all of a sudden there are children, tetatum, not just her. So this story was about another time she went with some other kids. Another clue is the word amam, meaning those just mentioned. Amam tetatum, those just mentioned children. Obviously, they were not just mentioned in the story we have. Tui kinobos, be all in bed. Do you remember tui kit, go to bed? And the new infix, long-lasting action, and kit turns into kinu, be in bed. It's like badoy kit, sit down, and then badoy kinu, be seated. Tui kinu bos, be completely in bed. Amuni, this means somebody else is going to do the next action. Now, Nik Opayatam is the subject, my late grandfather. Tuwe, tell stories. It might even be tuiwe, sleep talk. Maybe tell bedtime stories. This recording is the only example we have of this word, so I'm not completely sure. We learned it as pray, but that doesn't fit in here. Wepam tuedom, Coyote bedtime stories. That's the gist of it, even if I'm not translating it exactly right. Shipley translated it, tell tales of Coyote. Here's some new grammar. The helping verb con plus a verb partner ending in mapem means will be able to do, or if it's a story in the past like this one, would be able to do. Amuni kan nikopayatam weamapem. Then my late grandfather would be able to tell. Amuni kan nikopayatam weamapem. Tell what? Wepam tuedom, Coyote bedtime stories. Amam tetatum tui kinubostom, Amunikan nikopayatam, wepam weamapem, tuedom, adom ni seyahat pinkanuomapem. Pinkanuomapem. This is a verb partner to con, the same con that comes right after amuni. Weamapem and pinkanuomapem both share that con helping verb. Do you remember what we just learned about con plus mapem? It means will be able to do or would be able to do. We know the word pinkanu, listen, but there's an infix we haven't learned yet, wo. Wo can have different meanings, but in this case, wo means tell somebody to do. So what does nise pinkanu wo mean? Tell us to listen. What a great infix, wo. Adon kan nise yahat pinkanu wo mapem. And he could tell us to listen carefully.
Aweten magi inyanam yalaluni inyanam solusan.
Then, same subject, my late grandfather, he used to play Indian songs on his Indian flute. That then is a wetten instead of a money. A wetten keeps the same subject.
Tet minchum jahat pinkenu mankenu adom nise. Ka pai dom kaikas.
You all listen very carefully, saying to us, I am telling it like it was passed down. Tet minchum yahat pinkenu mankenu. What does that mean? A lot of times you will hear tet for tetet and yat for yahat when they're talking fast. You all listen carefully, talking to more than two people. Again, a bunch of kids, not just Maym Gallagher. Tet minchum yahat pinkenu mankenu. Adom niseh, saying to us all, more than two. Ka'apayadom kaikas. Shipley translated this as, I am talking in the ancient manner. We know kaikas means I am telling. Ka'apayadom kaikas. Ka'a means like that, or the same way. I'm telling it like that to you, the same way I learned it. I'm passing it down to you. That could be the meaning. We only have this one example of this word, so I'm not sure.
Dom pi usasane se tuwe dom se weye usan.
Saying that, he used to speak to us about many things, telling us bedtime stories. Here's that word tuedom again, telling bedtime stories, or orating as Shipley interpreted it. And he used to tell all of us, Nise weye usan, pi wasasa, a lot of stuff. Pi wasasa nise tuedom, nise weye usan.
Amoni pinkenu yutan bei mim tubusno wo usaese.
Then, after listening for a while, then that whole bunch of us would drift off to sleep. Amuni, that means the subject is going to change now, from my grandfather to that whole bunch of us. Muyimbo mom, that previously mentioned bunch. Now, what is the difference between a mom and muyim? Both mean that previously mentioned one. But there's a difference. A mom means the one that was just mentioned, the last one mentioned. In this case, a mom would refer to my grandfather, so she doesn't say a mom. She says muyim, the one mentioned before that bunch of us that was all put to bed, before she started talking about what her grandfather used to do. How could we tell that muyim bomom means that whole bunch of us? It's because of the verb ending on tuibos nowo usaisi, that whole bunch. We all completely drifted off to sleep.
Mam benektu de otodom chidaboshusen bei kaingis muim bomom sewi no eten bei kawi tawaldoidom odo chikutdom twalusaise.
That group of us getting up in the morning after we finished breakfast, we all, that whole group of us, as soon as we went down to the river, when we started work in the dirt, we all used to work washing out the gold. Amam, those that I just talked about, that group of us. Benekto diotorom, getting up the next day. Chedaboswetin, after eating breakfast. Same subject, we, that whole group. After we went down into the river, sewi uno wetin. Kainkes kawi tawaldoidom. We are all starting to work the dirt. Odo chukutdom tawalusayas. We all used to work, washing out the gold. Chukut means wash. This sentence is another clue that this is a different story that she was telling Shipley, and he combined them. Remember at the beginning, she was just watching her grandparents pan for gold, but now she's doing it herself along with everyone else.
Nik opan waisim kausan te tet yaham waisim tere tuna yahapim ni se makpapaiti dum humbet mani.
My old man grandfather was a very good old man to the children, someone who was good at teaching us anything. Waisim is old man. Nik opam waisim kausan. My old man grandfather used to be. Kausan means used to be for a person or situation that's no longer. We can translate it to English as was. Tetet yaham waisim tetetana. A very good old man to the children. Yahapem, someone who was good. Nise makpapaitidom. Teaching us more than two. Humbot many, anything. Humbot many.
Amam tawabus kusin makan se ki skam kapumim hubona yewe usais.
When we had all completely finished working, we all went back to our same bark house.
Ebum yakadom. Klok betetum kaptidom tibi musek kape.
Again, doing the same thing as before, the old ladies roasting a little of what they had. Miyakadom, doing the same thing as before. Miyakadom. Kulokbe is an old woman, but what you'll find in the stories, it's not necessarily a real old lady. She's old enough to be a grandmother, but she could still be of childbearing age. Notice that the plural, old ladies, is kolokbetetu, same ending as children, tetetu. It's like a whole nest full of old ladies or children. Kolokbetetum. Now, here's another clue that Shipley pieced two stories together. When Maym Gallagher starts out, it's just her with her grandmother and grandfather. Now there are several old ladies there, too. Kapti, to roast. In Maidu, there are several different words for different types of cooking. Kapti, roast over a fire. Homti, cook by boiling. And lit, bake under the ashes. Those are just three of them. Kaptidom tibim misek kupe, roasting a little of what they had. Kupe, what is had, from ku, have. Misek kupe is what they have or what they had.
Akumen kausan tibi wasasa peku kapem.
At that time, there used to be very little to eat, or very few who had something as food. Pekukupem, food having.
Woleki apem lawani mahatdom. Kochi bemat kudom. Dalalim hini homdom ausan.
Baking bread with flour made by whites, maybe having some bacon, they used to boil white beans. Mahati is bread, and making bread has its own verb, mahatdom. Wolaki apem, made by whites. Shipley translated this as called by whites, but I think that might have been yapem instead of yapem. Lawa is flour from English. Kochibe, bacon, or it could be a little pork. Kochi is pig. Kochibe ma'at kudom, maybe having some bacon. Dal dalim hini, white beans. Notice the word for beans and also the word for round berries is hini, the same word as eyes. Dal dalim hini. Shipley translated this as rice. Homdom ausan. They used to boil. The short verb a, do or say, with the usan ending can be a helping verb with a dome verb partner to mean used to be doing. If you use kausan instead, it means usually doing. So, daldalim hini homdom ausan means they used to be boiling white beans. But daldalim hini homdom kausan means they are usually boiling white beans. Confusing, I know, especially since kausan by itself means used to be, as we just saw. But with that verb partner, it means usually doing.
Aitin inyanam wolem kikanum inyanam bomum tia mapem. Yakuti don wolenam mistake makitpe.
Then Indians, what whites and that bunch of Indians would call tea, giving it a name from English for what they knew. Yakuti caused to have a name. Wolanan from English. Musek makitpe, what they knew. I interpret this as Indians already knew about their own types of tea, but started using the English word for it, tea.
Mama sim homdom semo tiusan.
Boiling that, they used to let us drink it. Mo is drink. Moti is to make somebody drink or let somebody drink. Nise moti usan. They used to let us all drink.
Aitin baby tu says makadom.
Then we all used to sleep, the same as before.
Aitin kankis uk oi mapem sekabona. Tawal hepin goidom.
Then we could all go off to our home, going home from work. Again, we have con plus mapem, meaning can do or could do. When you see a verb partner ending in mapem, check to see if there's a helping verb like con or kakan in the sentence. In this case, we see kainkes. Kainkes akoy mapem. We all could leave. We would all be able to leave. This is used a lot in Maidu. Tawal hepinkoidom. Hepinkoi means go home from work or go home from hunting. Tawal hepinkoidom. Not just to the little temporary bark house they were staying in, but back to their real homes. Tawal hepinkoidom. Go back home after sleeping away for work or hunting.
Kani aikate hukinukas.
I think that's all I remember. Kani aikate. That's all, I think. Hukinu. Remember. Hukinu kas. I remember. Hukinu kas.
Titade buwona ke hukichik dombe. Tem dekum masih minyana lutimbo mochenuonom. Wemtikas.
I did that a very long time ago, forgetting now, being only a child when I had watched that real bunch of Indians. I've talked enough. Ebuwono, a long time ago. Ebuwono. Tem dekum, only a child. It's the subject of the sentence along with I. You can tell because the verb akas ends in kas. I did it a very long time ago as only a child. Deku means only. Maise inyana lutimbo mo, them, a real bunch of Indians. Luti means real. Chenuwonom, having watched. Wemtikas. Wemtik means enough. Wemtikas, I have talked enough. A good way to end a story. Now I'll play it again without any pauses so you can follow along in the story.
Tibim klempubem hoiam kore di Niko Thomas Niko pa heino yeusas. Ja maailmaisen monovani heinodom oro tawalmani chenudom ausas. Mam klumani ianam huobi ja pedi tu usaesi. Amam tedetum tuikinu bosrom amanikan Niko pa tam wepam mapem tuidom. Ni sei hat pinkano mapem. Aweten magi inyanam yalaluni inyanam solusan. Tet minchemi hat pinkanu mankano adom ni se. Ka pai dom kaikas. Dom pi usasana se tuidom se weyusan. Amoni pinkenu yutan bei mim tubusno wo usaesi. Mam benektu de otodom chirabosusen bei kangas muim bomom sewi noeten bei kawi tawaldoidom oro chikutdom twalusaesi. Niko pa waisim kausan tet jaham waisim tedutuna jahapim ni se makpapaiti dom humbet meni. Amam tawalbosusen mekan iseki skam kapumim hubona iwe usais. Bebum miakadom klok betetum kaptidom tibi musek kape. Akumen kausan tibi wasasa pekuke pem woleki apem lawani mahatdom kochi bemat kedom dalalem hini homdom ausan. Aiten inyanam wolem kekan inyanam bomom tia mapem. Ja kutidom wolenan musek makitpe. Amamaisim homdom se motivusan. Aiten bebum tuises miakadom. Aiten kankes uk mapem sekubona. Tawal hepin goidom. Kani aikate hukinukas. Titade buona ke hukicik dom be. Tem dekum masih minyana lutimbo mochenuonom. Wemtikas.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to Maym Gallagher talking about her grandfather, and I hope you feel a little proud of yourselves for being able to understand her story and why she worded it the way she did. For homework, I'll have you practice the difference between kausan and ausan when they're helping verbs with a dom verb partner. One means usually or always does, and the other means used to do. Also, I'll have you practice saying that someone can do something or will be able to or would be able to do. You already know how to say can't do something by adding the ch infix. So we'll practice that in homework as well. That will be posted in our Facebook group. In the Modern Maidu Workbook, you also have some homework to do. Practice inventing new words on pages 26 through 31. You don't have to do all of them, just invent some that you think you might want to use. And if you memorize the short dialogues on page 29 to 31, you'll be able to use some of those new words and sentences and practice your dialogue and memorization skills. I'll also post the transcript of this recording on our Facebook page so you can download it and follow along if you like and fill in your own translation between the lines. I know that's a lot of homework and study on your own, but so good for you in your language learning. Wem tikas, chamakas min, yahat bispada.